All right, today we're going to dive into something I'm willing to bet you've heard a million times, maybe in school, maybe at a work training, the whole idea of learning styles.
So let me ask you, have you ever said something like, oh, I'm a total visual learner, or maybe I just can't learn unless I hear it? Yeah, those labels are literally everywhere. Today, we're going to find out if there's actually anything to them.
And the idea behind it is super simple. And, it just feels right, doesn't it? If you're a visual learner, you get pictures. If you're an auditory learner, you listen to a talk. It seems so neat and tidy. But, and this is the big question, does it actually hold up when you put it to the test?
Because this one simple, appealing idea, well, it's not just a theory anymore. It has absolutely exploded into a huge, thriving industry. Let's just take a peek at how big this whole thing has gotten.
So just how big are we talking? Get this. One major review found more than 71 different models for learning styles. And the craziest part? The researchers said their list wasn't even complete. That is just a wild number of competing theories out there. And this is basically the sales pitch. You've got companies making a ton of money selling these expensive tests and training programs, all promising they can pinpoint your unique style and, unlock your true potential. It's all packaged to look super scientific. But is it? Okay, so we've got this super popular idea and a whole industry making money off it. But before we even look at the evidence, let's stop and ask a really important question. What would it actually take to prove, scientifically, that this thing is real? What does that proof even look like? So, it really all comes down to this one core idea. Researchers have a fancy name for it. They call it the meshing hypothesis. But don't worry about the term. All it means is the very simple idea that you learn best when the teaching method meshes with your personal style. Simple, right? Visual teaching for visual learners. So to properly test that, you need a very specific kind of experiment. First, you'd get a bunch of students and give them a test to sort them into, say, visual and auditory learners. Then you randomly give people from both of those groups either a visual-based lesson or an audio-based lesson. And at the end, and this is key, everybody takes the exact same test. Okay, now here is the absolute crucial part. Imagine the results come in and it turns out the visual lesson just worked better for everybody, for the visual learners and the auditory learners. Well, that doesn't prove learning styles, not at all. All it proves is that the visual lesson was a better way to teach that particular topic. This is what you're looking for. This is the smoking gun. It's what scientists call a crossover interaction. It means you'd have to prove that visual learners actually do better with visual methods, and that auditory learners actually do better with auditory methods. See how those lines on the graph cross? That is the only result that would count as real proof. It's the gold standard. All right, now we know exactly what we're looking for. We have our target, that specific crossover proof. So let's go on a hunt through the actual scientific research and see if we can find it. The researchers behind a major review did exactly that. They dug through just mountains of studies, specifically hunting for any that use that rigorous experiment we just laid out. And what they found, well, let's just say it's pretty surprising. So think about it. All the money, all the tests, all the consultants. After all of that, how many studies out there actually found that one piece of evidence, that gold standard crossover proof, that would make this whole thing legitimate? Are you ready for this? The answer is almost zero. Virtually none. The vast majority of the studies didn't even use the right kind of scientific method to test the idea in the first place, and the handful that did do it right, well, they didn't find any evidence for learning styles, and some of them even found results that flatly contradicted the whole idea. So what on earth is going on here? Why does this idea feel so right if it's not true? Well, it seems we're all mixing up two very different things, preference and performance. Look, we all have preferences, right? I might like watching a video, you might prefer reading a book. That part's totally real. But, and this is the killer insight, the research shows that preference has basically nothing to do with how well you actually learn. Just because you like it a certain way doesn't mean you learn better that way. And this is pretty much the final word from the scientific community. The evidence just isn't there. There's no good reason to be using these learning style tests in our schools or workplaces. In fact, the researchers go so far as to call it unwise and a wasteful use of limited resources. Ouch! So if labeling ourselves by style is pretty much a dead end, what's next? Are we just stuck? No way. This is actually the exciting part. Let's talk about what actually works, strategies that are backed by solid science and work for pretty much everyone. It turns out the most powerful ways to learn have nothing to do with our supposed styles. They're all about tapping into how all of our brains are actually wired. Take spaced practice. It's a simple idea. Don't cram. Studying for an hour a day over 5 days is way better than one 5-hour marathon session. Then you've got interleaving. That just means mixing up the kinds of problems you're working on. It feels harder in the moment, but you learn the material so much more deeply. And maybe my favorite is the testing effect. Stop just rereading your notes. That's super passive. Instead, quiz yourself. Force your brain to actually pull that information out. That's what really makes memory stick.
So, this really leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? Should we keep pouring our time and energy into these unproven styles, or should we shift our focus to these powerful, universal strategies that science shows can help all of us learn better? The evidence seems pretty clear, but I'll leave you to think about that one.